So the search is needles and pins at 18 past 1 here at 89.7. Well, what can be painful, like needles and pins, is the human resources area for some small to medium-sized businesses. To make it less painful, we're going to have a chat to Emma Driscoll, who's a human resources professional. She's going to give us a few tips on what to do and what not to do, especially if you're a small to medium-sized business. You might like to have a listen. Emma, good afternoon. How are you going?
Hello, John. I'm well, and you?
Well, thank you, Emma. Well, tell me, there's a whole range of matters dealt with under human resources, aren't there? You there, Emma?
Yes, I am.
Sorry. There's a whole range of matters that are dealt with under human resources, aren't there?
Yes, there are. And I mean, I think that's one of the most interesting things about HR is what people actually think falls under the HR banner and what isn't. And it's a very, very broad area. And this is probably partly why a lot of small and medium business owners kind of can sometimes get into trouble, because we automatically assume that because we're people, everybody can kind of work in HR. It's not like accounting where, you have to have particular qualifications and a certain knowledge set. We all have to deal with people. But HR is not just about payroll. It's not, in fact, most places HR is not about payroll. It's not just about recruiting. It's a very broad spectrum area. And interestingly, HR has come into its own right, if you like, in the last 5 to 10 years in this massive digital age, which has made HR even more complicated, not to mention our favourite area of millennials. So it does encompass recruitment, it encompasses payroll, there's a whole bunch of things about it, but there's a need for other things to be coming into play. We're so much more, it's much more obvious what a company's doing and what it's not doing due to the digital age now. So even things like brand awareness is a massive part of HR. Employee experience is a huge part of HR. Looking at how you're managing performance and how you're keeping people interested. So it's a massive area, and I mean in large companies, even not even in huge companies that have got over probably 200 people, you'll have several people potentially working in HR, and small businesses obviously don't have that luxury.
Emma, you're not a millennial yourself, are you?
No, I'm just not. I'm just out of... Although, interestingly, my sister's technically a millennial, but I don't actually think... I think it's changed even in the last 5 to 10 years.
They're a new breed of workers, of course, okay.
Definitely.
And older people older people like myself, of course, struggle with them at times. How are millennials affecting small to medium-sized businesses?
Look, I think millennials are fabulous. I actually think millennials are fabulous because they're considered to be a bit more high maintenance. But actually, if you can, I can probably just basically give people a few tips on what to do and how to provide support. And what even is a millennial? I mean, technically speaking, a millennial is anybody that was born between 1980 and 1999. So actually, where I'm sort of, there's a pretty large range in there, but one of the things is to remember that millennials have been brought up in an age where they're told that they can do anything and they can have anything and they can be anyone. No longer is there this sort of attitude that you have to stay in the same job for your whole life and then you might get a gold watch at the end of it and then you retire. There's this concept of, career breaks and different things that you might want to do. So I think the first thing to do is to say to people, and it's something that people struggle to get their head around a little bit, but without a framework, without boundaries, you actually can't have any flexibility. So to think that millennials work well with just this whole idea of flexible working hours and all this kind of thing, that yes, they do, but you need to have some boundaries. You've got to have some structure. And to be honest, it's just like a little kid. You actually need to have structure. You've got to have boundaries in place. They've got to be able to see that there's a vision of where a company's going. So if you're in a small business, you want to be able to see this company's heading in a particular direction, and I, at the moment, fit in here, but I could also go over here and I can see that there's actually options for me. So having some good, strong leadership for millennials is really important. Having goals in place that they can aim towards and genuine opportunities where they can actually make a difference. I think I would encourage small and medium business owners to also get millennials to be involved in things because they're going to be way better at anything to do with technology than you and I would ever be. I'm assuming you're not a millennial, John.
No, I'm an older person, Emma, quite a bit older, and I can see the challenges that some of the older people, the matured age bracket, actually face with some of the millennials. Having said that, why not drop in a bit of praise from time to time? They do some great work, and that seems to go a long way, whether that's a younger person or an older one.
Absolutely, and I think that there's a bit of fear attached to millennials. And again, this comes back to one of the most pivotal things that's changed HR. The fact that we even know that there's a terminology called millennial in the first place speaks volumes. We would never have had that type of name in the past. You know, we've sort of started having these names for baby boomers and millennials and all this kind of thing. And I think there is a bit of fear attached to what that actually means for the older generations. And, you know, even my age and above, people are quite scared about technology and what all of that stuff means. So if you know your business has to move into that next sort of age, well, get the millennials to do it for you. They'll do it faster, they'll do it better, they'll be enthusiastic, and you'll keep them because they can see that they're part of something bigger than themselves. And that's the other thing that's becoming quite important for people. You know, we're in an age now where people are starting to finally genuinely have some concern about what are they doing in society, you know, what's happening, what are they doing to give back. So if you can see that you're a part of something bigger than yourself, this is something that's really important to millennials as well. They want to know that they're going somewhere. They want a piece of it.
Let's talk about difficult conversations.
And then they want to be told they're doing a great job.
And we've already talked about a few of them. Let's talk about difficult conversations. One of them, of course, can be asking for a pay rise. It's still pretty difficult for females in the workplace to ask for a pay rise. I see where it's a lot harder for a woman than it is for a man.
Now, I don't, you know what, I'm going to sound really controversial here, but I really don't understand why that's the case. I think that the problem with pay rises is people come at their pay rises from a very emotional perspective. So what can happen, for example, one of these, if you're talking pay rises, one of these things that I come across a lot with what I do is that people will come into a pay conversation completely from the wrong angle, because what they're doing is they're allowing their personal circumstances to dictate what they're saying to a person that's going to potentially be able to offer them that increase. So they'll come in and they'll talk about the fact that they need the increase. And then you're coming from a place of emotion which makes you sound quite desperate. You're not coming from a place of self-worth in terms of, well, what have I done in this organisation? It's not a case of I've just been here for another 12 months. Where have I added value? Where have I saved the company money? Where have I added value to the company? If you're not in a billable type role, if you're in a cost type role, what things have I put in place? How would the company go if I wasn't here? And be objective. Take the emotion out of it. Write some things down and actually prepare to have that conversation. A lot of people don't do any preparation. So, you know, that's one area. And females have historically had a few issues in that department. From my experience, certainly in the last few years, that really has become a lot easier. And it is just about talking to people about what they're worth, what their values are, and how they are contributing. So that's one area. In terms of difficult conversations around, you know, you get a lot of things around behaviours and performance and things like that. One of the biggest things that I say to people is that difficult conversations generally weren't difficult to start with. They're difficult because they get put off, they don't get nipped in the bud when they need to be discussed. So the first thing to say is just to acknowledge that if there is an issue, it's not going to go away. So actually putting a strategy together around what the problem actually is and starting that conversation quite early. And a lot of them are around performance. You know, you get someone that's not really performing particularly well, but they haven't really been managed, properly. And then by the time they've passed probation, it's a bit too late and suddenly they're a dud employee. That's not really the employee's fault.
Are we becoming too politically correct in the workplace? Too politically correct and losing fun, the ability to have fun with each other in the workplace, which of course can impede on the capability of the business to build a better teamwork.
You're kind of asking the wrong person here because I'm not particularly politically correct. I'm not your typical HR ticking and flicking policies and procedures person. I believe that we all have a set of values that we're born with, and we don't have a lobotomy just because we walk into a workplace at the beginning of the day. You know, we're people. And yes, you don't want to be saying things that are inappropriate in the workplace, and there are some silly people out there that make comments that they shouldn't. But yes, absolutely. People are worried that they're going to get taken to Fair Work. They're worried they're going to get sued if this and that and everything else happens. So this comes back to a bigger area, which is actually to do with culture of businesses. So when I look at, sort of small business and to medium business. So we're talking anywhere between, 5 employees and probably 100 to 150. You need to look at what culture you want in your business so that all of these things become far less likely to be a problem. So look at the values of the business owners and say, well, what's important to me in this business? What's going to be important to my people? So that you can actually, I suppose, evoke a culture that actually minimises the chance of you not having fun in the workplace. And I think people also need to realise that, often things are said in jest and you don't need to take everything really personally. It doesn't have to become something that's awful. There's a big difference between having a bit of a joke around and someone being genuinely a bit of a jerk. Yeah.
Those weekends away, are they a good means to actually build better teams?
Again, it depends why you're doing it. If you're doing it just to tick something off, to sort of say, oh, look, we've had a great weekend away, then I don't know that they do anything. And I think if it's considered to be a token effort, it's not a great thing. But if you're a business where you can demonstrate that you've got values in there that you're living and breathing, and you want a genuine opportunity to spend some time with your people outside of the client-facing world, I think they can be fabulous. I think there is definitely a bit of a growing trend for businesses to be a bit mindful of taking too much time out of people's personal lives, which I think is a good thing. But at the same time, if you can mix that up with having a culture where people genuinely enjoy spending time together, and say you run some of it on a Friday and part of it on a Saturday, I think that's actually fine. I think if you expect your people to go all weekend and you're still working all day Friday, probably not ideal.
There's a fair bit of help out
there. So there's
there.
Sort of got to be, yeah.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of help out there, isn't there, for medium-sized businesses and small businesses when it comes to human resources. Would you advise small to medium-sized businesses to tap into that information and to tap into that professional aspect so they can get this right?
Yes. Look, I mean, obviously that's easy for me to say, but I genuinely believe, as a small business owner myself, I pay other people to do things for me so I can do what I do best. And if you can get this sort of area right and you can get advice right from the start, you're going to have a much, much more successful outcome as you go along and as you grow. And depending on where you want to go to, working with somebody who actually knows how to do this properly, it's exactly the same as working with a bookkeeper or an accountant or an SEO specialist or digital marketing or whatever it is that you're looking at. And I think there's a lot of pressure on business owners to get this right. And you're not born necessarily with a set of skills that lends you to this. You might be born with a set of skills that's something completely different. So don't expect that you're going to necessarily be good at this.
Well, Emma Driscoll, of course, you're a human resources professional. It's been a pleasure having you on Movers and Shakers. Thanks for providing that insight into the human resources area. Let's hope some of the small to medium-sized businesses get on board and improve their human resources sector.
You are very welcome, John. Thank you very much for your time.